Do men and women have different brains? Significantly?
Wildly so.
Wildly
So
different.
this whole thing about you can't put your gender on your medical forms is just insanely stupid. Because gender matters. Like estrogen and testosterone, they matter when it comes to brain function. I published a study on 46,000 scans looking at the differences between male and female brains, and they're wild. Women have much better frontal lobes function, but much better blood flow to the front part of their brain,
Which makes them...
good leaders. If you think of impulse control and collaboration and communication. And the one statistic that just hammers this home is who goes to jail? Men. 14 times more than women. But women get depressed twice as much as men because their limbic or emotional brain is much busier than the male brain. And that's why in every human society, women are primary caretakers for children. Women have a bigger nesting instinct. So I told you we moved recently, and moving is much harder on women in general than it is in men because they feel like they lose their nest and they have to redo their nest. And I was an Army psychiatrist for 7 years, and I used to always tell the guys, I'm like, when you move, you stay home and help her put the house together because she's going to be way happier for you.
On that impulse control bit, I remember reading the statistics that men suffer with gambling addictions and betting addictions significantly more than women.
Drug addictions, alcohol, ADD, 5 times more than women. But women get help because they're not afraid to ask for help. Where for men, it's often a macho thing. It's like, there's nothing the matter with me, which is why women attempt suicide 3 to 4 times more than males, but males kill themselves 3 to 4 times more than women do because men use more violent means. And men aren't communicating, I'm in trouble.
Saunas and exercise on the brain. Good for the brain?
So I'm a huge fan of saunas because the studies, mostly from Northern Europe, people who take the most saunas have the lowest incidence of Alzheimer's disease. And I told you about my mercury. Detoxing is really important. And you can detox in a lot of different ways, but sauna is one of the most effective ways. Exercise is, you want to stay young, walk like you're late. If you're 80 and you can walk 3 miles an hour, you have a 90% chance of living till you're 90. If you can only walk a mile an hour, you have a 90% chance you're not going to live until you're 90. So exercise boosts blood flow. It increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It increases serotonin, increases dopamine. Another interesting thing is, should you do cold plunges? Because cold plunges have been found to fairly dramatically increase dopamine.
So you should do cold plunges?
Not if you have heart problems. So if you have heart problems, I wouldn't do that. But if you have inflammation, if you have pain, if you tend to be depressed, there's evidence cold plunges can be helpful.
What about weight in the brain? When you look at someone who is clinically obese and you look at their brain, what do you see? And if I'm trying to lose weight, what do I need to know about the brain?
You know, I've thought a lot about this because I have obesity in my family. As your weight goes up, the size and function of your brain goes down. And that's horrifying. People who are, and our society's against us. I mean, I wrote a book called The Brain Warrior's Way, and I argue you're in a war for the health of your brain. Everywhere you go, someone's trying to shove bad food down your throat that will kill you.
I can see the emotion in your face when you say this.
Yeah. It's just horrifying, to think of Carl's Jr. that'll take these, Charlotte McKinney or Catherine Webb, these beautiful women, and have them eat cheeseburgers. And it's unconsciously, people are like, if you eat those burgers, these women will want you. Well, these women have spit buckets on those sets where every time they take a bite, they spit it out because they'd never have those bodies if they ate that food. We are being manipulated, and it is causing what I think is one of the greatest epidemics ever of obesity. And as you're overweight, lower blood flow, aging, inflammation, stores toxins, makes you feel awful about yourself, takes healthy testosterone. We talked about, why the low. Takes healthy testosterone and turns it into unhealthy, cancer-promoting forms of estrogen. It's just a disaster what's happening. I think you have to start counting your calories. And, I run up against all sorts of scientists go, calories don't count. It's complete crap. Now, the quality of your calories is just as important, but don't eat more than you need. And we live in a society where we're eating way too much, and people don't know. If you think of the Cheesecake Factory and these monster portions, it's like, that's insane. And it's a big thing that changed. But the obesity epidemic really started as the U.S. government, among others, demonized fat. Everything became low fat in the 80s, low fat, low cholesterol. And they put sugar in things to replace it. And in fact, it just came out recently, it was in the 60s, that some of the sugar companies paid scientists to say it's fat, not sugar. And it damaged millions of people.
Last thing I wanted to ask you about is, well, there's really two outstanding questions that I have for you, Doctor. The first one is about screen time. People want to know, does screen time, this generation that have grown up 11 hours a day on a screen or social media, up to 11 hours a day, according to some studies, does that have an impact on our brain?
It does. It shrinks it. It's sad. I mean, what it does is it wears out your pleasure centers. So you have these two areas in your brain called the nucleus accumbens, and they respond to dopamine. And they bring you happiness, and they bring you pleasure, and they bring you motivation, and they bring you drive. And when you're hitting them, like every buzz on your phone, every notification, every time you scroll and you like something, you just got a little hit of dopamine. Well, the more you do it, pretty soon you thrill them to death. You begin to wear out those pleasure centers. And let's just take fame, for example. I've been blessed to see Justin Bieber and Miley Cyrus and a whole bunch of really fascinating, cool people who've been really depressed. It's like, how can you be depressed? You're Justin Bieber. Or how can you believe you're not enough, right? Because their pleasure centers get worn out by being noticed over and over and over again. Well, when you allow that in your brain, the screen time, 3.5 hours. If you're on for 3.5 hours a day, you have an increased risk of anxiety, depression, addiction, obesity, ADHD. And our society is on way more than that. And you go, so why are we having this epidemic of teenage suicide and mental health problems, especially in teenage girls? Social media. It's one of the big issues of the day. And not only are you wearing out your pleasure centers, you hate yourself because you think everybody's better than you are. It's the comparison dragon that is damaging you.
My last question is about happiness, which we're talking about there. I spoke to, I think it was Tally Sharrett that told me happiness takes on this kind of interesting arc throughout our lives, where at the start of our lives, we're a little bit happier. Then in the middle of our lives, we're a little bit sadder. And then as we age, we go back into being happy. Now, I was contrasting that information to what you said about how the brain withers with age. If the brain is withering with age, then how come a lot of neuroscientists think that happiness resembles this kind of U shape in our lives, where in the middle of our lives, we're less happy. At the start and the end, we're more happy?
That's a great question. We're less striving as we age, right? So after 65, 70, we've sort of done much of the hard things that we need to do. And so depression also goes up with age too. And obviously dementia goes up with age. So I think it's because I don't have to accomplish things, which makes the middle part so hard.
So we're more satisfied with the nature of our lives because we're not trying to...
Well, if we are, right? If we're not, then that becomes a problem and increases the risk of depression.
It's complicated though, isn't it? Because, you get older, you probably have less connections as well. So that's a confounding factor. And
yeah, so I wouldn't...
It's very...
I mean, I have seen that research, and I wrote a book on happiness because, when I write a book, it'll take me 6 to 9 months to write it. And I'm like, so what do I really want to think about for this next 6 to 9 months? And I loved it because, like negative thinking is a bad habit, is happiness is also a habit. And when I go to bed and I go, what went well today? I'm feeding happiness. Or throughout the day, if I look for the micro moments of happiness, what's the smallest thing that's going to happen today that's going to make me happy? Then I'm just happier.
I hear all of this and I read all of this in your books. And one of the things I've really taken away personally is because I have so much information, what I need to do is select a couple of these habits and basically put them into my calendar. Like you talked about the breath work and you talked about the gratitude exercise at night and those kinds of things. What I need to do is get a couple of them and just insert them into my calendar. Because, if they're not scheduled, they probably won't happen in a life as busy as mine. So as well as making small sort of changes to the, maybe dietary things or water or whatever it might be, drinking a little bit less caffeine, I've already quit alcohol, make sure I focus on my sleep. Some of these I want to make routines in my life. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to take away from this. We have a closing tradition on this podcast where the last guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who they're going to be leaving it for. And the question that's been left for you is quite perfect, I think. What have you changed your mind about in the last decade?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is this idea that I got from Dennis Prager, which is happiness is a moral obligation. I never thought of it that way. I grew up Roman Catholic. That idea was nowhere in my family. It was nowhere in the Catholic school I went to. And I'm grateful for my education. And I'm grateful for my faith. But it was about should and shaming rather than elevation. And the fact that happiness is a moral obligation. There's this video that Dennis Prager produced that I just love called Why Be Happy? And I never thought that how I feel influences everybody around me. That if I'm unhappy, that's not just about me. That's about everybody I come in contact with. So working on myself is the most loving thing I can do for other people.
Daniel G. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you for an amazing conversation. And also thank you for taking the time to look at my brain. And you're totally right. Now that I have the awareness that that brain even exists, having seen it, it's almost like I feel like it's like a Pablo, my dog. I now feel a responsibility to take care of it. And I think that coupled with everything that you've imparted on me about the fact that I can do something about it for me is life-changing. And, you know, I could have sat here all day and read tens of thousands of comments that I saw online about the work that you're doing to help people live happier, healthier lives. And the consequence that has for generations, I think, is maybe the most special thing of all. Because if you can tilt someone's brain in a better direction, you're not just tilting their brain in a better direction, you're tilting generations to come of brains in a better direction. And that alone will tilt society in a better direction. And that's exactly the work that you're doing. So I know we talked about your father last time round. You know, oftentimes we don't get the praise from our parents that I guess we always longed for. But I really hope you understand how proud everyone is of you. All the patients that you've invested time and love and energy in, all the people that listen to this show that were tilted in a better direction because of you, and me as well. My life's been tilted in a better direction because of you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. What a joy.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.